Hello. All right. I'm excited to share the journey on how we applied a product structure to FinOps to educate and support our end users. But first, about me. I live by the 3 Ps: people, process, policy. And yes, in my work life and in my real day-to-day life too. People are always first, right? Human-centric. Then you've got to give them a process to follow. Then you give them a policy, so guardrails. So I live by the 3 Ps. You will see them throughout this presentation. You'll also maybe see a 4th P, and I'll see if you can pick up on the theme. All right, so I mostly work in FinOps, finance, and asset management. When I first started at the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, I was a OADC. I don't even know what that acronym means anymore. But what we did was manage assets, so hardware, software, for the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. Later on, I wanted to do more analytical things that help to answer questions. And so I threw my name in the hat for a finance analyst position. My parents were very confused, and they were like, are they sure they want you for finance? And over time, that job actually turned into what I do today, which is a senior product owner, and my product is FinOps. And then outside of the work realm, I'm a coach, I'm a runner, and I'm a volunteer. I like to volunteer on a national scale, so I'm big in the road running community, and also I like to volunteer for nonprofits that particularly support women's initiatives. And then last but absolutely not least, we have our practitioner and our engineer certifications. I highly recommend you dive into those if you haven't yet. It's a great way to get started. So now let's talk about where I work, which is the Federal Reserve. So to kind of kick this part off, I will say that what I'm talking about is not representative of the Federal Reserve as a whole. It is my reflection, but these 2 slides have been provided by the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. So the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 established a monetary system basically to reduce the stretches of the banking system. And basically, we have a public service mission to foster stability, integrity, and efficiency of our nation's monetary, financial, and payments systems. We are accountable to the American public. We are nonpartisan, open, and transparent about its operations. To drill down a little bit more, we have 12 regional reserve banks that are all independent, nonprofit organizations that serve a unique geographic district. The district that I sit in is the 5th district, which is Richmond. We also have branches in Baltimore and Charlotte. And also, the fun fact about Richmond Fed is we're home to National IT, which is the technology organization that supports the entirety of the Federal Reserve System, and where I actually sit in the organization. So now with all that background, let's talk about our FinOps journey. So we started our cloud cost management journey in 2019, and it was like that ball of string. Quite the mess. But we would find a thread and we'd pull on it until it was unraveled. Maybe there was a knot here or there, but we'd keep pulling, keep checking it, and then moving forward. We used to have a cloud service provider that provided reporting, and we would take those spreadsheets and we would take those invoices and boil them down into things that we thought would be helpful to our end users. But the hard part was that we would not get these invoices until a month and a half after. So if you're getting a cloud invoice a month and a half after you've actually spent it, what good is that to you? You can't make any decisions. You're not even getting the best of what cloud could provide to you. We found that there was a lot of risk, right? Not just with that delay in time, but also in just like fat fingering the numbers, right? We were doing this all by hand. And by we, I mean me. I was doing this all by hand for each individual application. It was not pleasant. And so we found that we needed something that was more scalable and sustainable overall. And the Fed system actually adopted a new cloud reporting tool. And so we got together and kind of just figured out how to use it. We ended up actually adopting Agile in that process as well, because we wanted to be able to produce quickly and be able to throw those reports out as soon as they were ready so that people could get started on this journey before it was too late. I will say our first Agile team name was Show Me the Money for cloud cost transparency. And we, over time, I think we were able to show people what they were spending, which I'm really happy about. But we used this tool to help drive the change of the mindset around what cloud cost transparency could be to our end users. So we had to build a FinOps function. So looking ahead at this, it was a little rough. We knew we couldn't just create reporting and then send it out to people and the problem be solved. Yay, we were done. No, we had to get buy-in from our client base. We had to get clarity around the evolving roles and responsibilities, access to the training, and then also having sound governance around all of these things to ensure that we actually got the adoption we were looking for. So starting from the top, we had to make sure that we had parity. So parity in the reporting that we already created. So our spreadsheet served as our first mock-ups. And so being able to look at those and say, great, that is a great place to start, but what are people gonna need to know for the future? And because they're looking at this information today, we needed to know, okay, this is what they got now. What might they want in the future? What is on their roadmap that they're gonna need to be able to track in the near future? And so we took that approach to see how we could provide more transparency for long term. Then, I'm also gonna go ahead and skip over, actually I'm gonna talk about governance next. So let's talk about how policy technically falls in with that governance, right? So we needed to make sure that people actually went through with the reporting that we had at hand. Because if you don't give people a requirement or a process to follow, they're not gonna do it. So for us, one of the things we had to do was make it part of the onboarding experience. So before they could even get access to their accounts, they had to go through all the training and documentation on how to review this in the reporting tool. So you can get a lot of adoption when people are forced to do it before they're able to do anything else. And that also then allowed for people to have that cost consciousness before they even got started. Because a lot of times, if you're thinking, this is the project I've got to do, I've been told this has to be done by a certain amount of time, they don't care about the cost right now, right? They're like, this is the budget, and until we hit it, let's not worry about it. So now I'm gonna go back to product, and I'm gonna say, this is the fourth P. If we could add one, this would be it. Now, I'm gonna tell you a time where I gave one of the first demos of this particular tool that we were rolling out, and I had a customer pause the demo and say, "You're a liar." And I was so distraught. I was so hurt because I had spent all this time building up this tool. I was so excited. We're getting them reporting. We're going from month and a half late spreadsheets to within 2 days, you can see your cost data. And that wasn't good enough. And you have to kind of remember the product mindset in this. It's not about us, whether you're a product owner or a product manager or anybody that's distributing a tool. It's not about us. It's about guiding the end user to be the hero of their own story. And so if you think about it that way, and you think about that servant leadership in this particular role, it then takes away some of those feelings, and then you can bring your customers along for the ride to help you better that tool along the way. So on top of that product piece, we also have the user experience. Now, you might be like, well, the product is the user experience. I don't know why those would be separate, but we had to put an extra emphasis on what our users were seeing. You spend all this time building a tool, and then you don't teach people how to use it. And so if we expect people to use it, we have to kind of lead them. One of the metaphors I like to use is, all right, I'm rowing the boat, and look, it's so great to see that sunset over the river, over there. Just trust me. Instead, we would have to put people in the boat with us, and we can all row over there together, right? So that led to so many demos. I probably gave a demo a week for several, almost years, I guess. So we did demos, we did documentation, we did drop-in calls. We were trying to get on any agenda that would have us. I have over 20 hours of recordings that are stored on our internal system so that people can go out there and watch whenever they feel like it. And I hope and I believe that being able to provide all those things kept some of our users closer to the vest on things and be more willing to have those conversations with us. And so, speaking of users, let's talk about my customer base. All right, so these 4 personas are the people that actually make up the bulk of my customer base. Now, of course, all of them are important, but let's be real. Engineering is probably my most important persona in this particular group. I'm so sorry. Some of my users are in the back. I will say, I like to keep the engineers happy for a multitude of reasons. And I also sometimes just group them in with technical types, so I use those terms interchangeably. But they're usually looking for similar information if I group them in that particular group. The next group that I'm actually really worried about in this process is finance. And because they're involved in a way that they've never had to be before. And so for them, they're wondering, who is Athena and why are we paying her so much? And it's gotten to that point with them where they're like, all right, I guess I have to understand this, but why? Why is it important? And so for these first 2 personas, one of the things that's most important about them is they're the most fish out of water out of all 4. So I actually like to build things to support them a little bit more. So we created a document for finance terms for engineers and technical terms for finance. Turned out to be a big hit because it gave people enough common language to be able to have those conversations. Of course, if you're telling people, I want all the personas to meet together, and they're still not using a common language, they're not gonna get what they need out of those meetings. And so then you just have finance people not coming to the meetings anymore, or you have engineers not coming to the meeting anymore, and then you're not having anything be productive out of those, what I like to call $20 million meetings. So the next 2 are the leadership and product teams, and I actually tend to group them together because they're usually looking for similar things. They are looking for things in the data and the reporting, usually across a couple groups. They are looking at more of that enterprise view. They're looking at monthly data, year-to-date data. They're usually not too granular. And so a lot of times what I'll do is when I do training, I'll group those and then have specialized training for the other 2 because you can only make so much reporting and so much conversation with those groups. Now that I've talked through the personas, I support about 700 clients total across the different Federal Reserve banks. They're internal and they are our client group. So we sit in a group that provides services to several other reserve banks. This can get really complicated because you're wondering what point of view someone might be sitting in. Or you just get an email from a particular group and you have no idea who they might be supporting. There's several applications sitting in that group. So it adds a lot of complexity, but being able to filter them out into different groups, be able to then sort them into their persona, you can get them supported quicker rather than holding on and having to have a back and forth. And then last but not least, the most important thing about our customers is that they're mission driven. They care, and they care a lot. I cannot tell you how many times I've been on a call where someone's like, I can't find this $20 charge, and we've probably spent more than $20 trying to find it. If anything, we've spent 3 days trying to find that money. We're not gonna find it. But what's nice about this is that this is the basis of what we build the rest of our program on. Because they care, that's one level that we don't have to worry about. At the bare minimum, they care. And as you all know, especially if you're in the public sector, it's important. You do want people that are mission driven and that care about what they're spending, right? Because if you don't care, you can't get them to care. So keep that in mind as you are building out your practice. It can get really, really fun. And we connect with other personas and we connect with other groups that might not necessarily be in our section, but they might not be the core focus of our reporting. What we will say is that if people come to us with requests, we will do what we can to try and bridge the gap. But at this time, most of those things could change, and a lot of those things that might change also relate to the framework. So let's talk about how we blend in the framework. So for us, our reporting platform vendor actually introduced us to FinOps as a true term. Before then, we were really just calling it a cloud cost transparency journey. And once we got our hands on the framework, we were so excited because we were like, oh, we're on the right track, right? A lot of times when you hear about something, whether it's a Gartner article or you see something online and you're like, is that how we should be doing it? Well, this was our validation that we needed. And for us, what resonated most were the principles. So if we talk through these principles, one of the things that we found that were most important was that teams needed to collaborate. In the past, some of those personas never talked to each other, right? They just got the reporting or they got like the numbers and they kept it moving. Or they bought something and it just depreciated for 10 years and then it rolled off the books and then we never thought about it again. But now you have to bring in finance, you have to bring in engineering, leadership should definitely be involved to have all those conversations. And as we're having those conversations, what does that look like in our roadmap? What can we maybe push forward, pull back, so that everybody at the table understands what's going on? And so being able to do those things was very key. I'll also say everybody taking ownership for their technology usage. One of the things that we found that was interesting is that people are like, it doesn't matter to me. And you're wondering, well, why wouldn't it matter to you? This is your app. And so being able to say, all right, everybody's gonna take a step back and actually look at this data on a daily basis in order to make sure that we're keeping track, make sure that nothing is outrageous or nothing's happening, there's no spikes, and be able to then, if there are spikes or there are things that we were not planning for, how quickly can we mitigate those so that they don't become a problem later on? And then the third one, our reporting really aligns with that FinOps data, right? So data should be accessible, timely, and accurate. So thinking back to our friend that called me a liar for that first demo, one of the things that he was most frustrated about is that we called it real time, when most reporting does take a little bit of time to kind of process through the system, come over, and then be available for view. And so when we think about that, what does timely mean to your end user? Is that a day? Is that 48 hours? And keeping that in mind as you are navigating what you can provide and how quickly you can provide it. And also thinking about how many layers of data do you have in your particular organization? Maybe everybody doesn't need to see everything. How are you gonna handle that so that they are seeing an accurate picture, even though they might not be able to see the whole picture? And so being able to parse through those things was very interesting for us because we found that what our row-level security needed was different for each group. Some of the product and leaders, they needed to see across an entire district, whereas some other ones need to see just one app here. And so how do you do that when you're locked down within a particular system? So answering those questions, we were then able to kind of lean over into some of the domains and capabilities. For us, we weaved in and out of these very regularly, and I imagine that yours also does that too. So we found that once we solved one, we could move to the other. For us, solving for that reporting and that analytics, we then were able to be able to do better budgeting, forecasting, and then taking one more step down, being able to then build out okay, now that we have those tools, well, let's build on that education. And then we kind of go back and forth between that understanding cost usage or cloud usage and cost, quantifying business value, and then being able to manage the FinOps practice. And being able to roll back and forth through those kind of gave us like the next thing to do, because we were never done, right? We would solve for something and then there would be something else that would pop up. And so for us, as we kind of went through each line, we would feel good about it, move on, add another note to our roadmap, and then we would sometimes get those recommendations from our end users. We tried to outpace our end users as best as possible, but we did find that, oh, there's more questions about this. And so curiosity led to more curiosity, and it ended up requiring us to do more things, get more granular data, and be able to support some of those questions that they were asking. I will also say that what's been interesting with the framework, especially as we see it grow, and while we might not yet be in that space of managing AI or other things, we did find that asset management was one of those spaces that we could easily apply these principles to. And in the time that we were having that conversation, they started to fold me in. Almost a week later, the FinOps Foundation announced the intersecting disciplines and all the different things. And so again, we felt like we had some validation of, okay, good, we're still on the right track, regardless of how hard it might seem. I will say, one of the things I recommend for practitioners is to hop on those calls, right? Whether it's geared towards the public sector or not, you can still get pieces and parts that you can add to your practice that can support your group. And maybe it's something you're just not quite there yet, but if you're like me and you have a 12-month roadmap or a 16-month roadmap, the 16-month roadmap technically doesn't exist because it's outside of that scope, but I sometimes will put things on that 16-month roadmap to come back to. Do we have more information? Do we have more, do we have groups that might need some of those things that I heard about in another session? So I would highly recommend get on those groups, go to the Chalk Talks, be able to maybe interact with groups like what we're doing here, because you never know what somebody else could be like talking about or dealing with. And even if it's something you're not readily available or ready to hop into, you'll think of it, somebody will come to you with a request and you'll say, oh, I remember that person at FinOps X that said this. Use the stuff. Don't create things that you don't have to. So let's talk about some of the highlights of our practice. So we have a FinOps community of practice that is pretty rigorous. It's a quarterly meeting where we build camaraderie about reporting, the FinOps Act practice as a whole, and it's a place to share ideas. We've also found that to be a great place for some of our end users to share what they have learned, and also bringing in other groups. Sometimes we'll bring in vendors. Any time I can not be the person leading the conversation is a great time. So as people get more comfortable with the practice, they've brought their own ideas, and that's been a blast. Sorry. I will say that in the early days, the FinOps community of practice was actually controversial. People were like, does a cloud of financials, does it really need its own meeting, its own group, its own community? Well, we found that it does, because it allows us to share some of that early functionality, get that feedback directly from the user on the call, share governance and policy updates, and then just continues to let us share. And I will say it brings that big picture of FinOps down another layer, because I think a lot of times when we say things like FinOps, especially in the public sector, or we say things like DevOps, like people are like, oh yeah, that concept, that thing, you have to make it real for your group, and what it looks like, and do it in practice. And so I will also say, I'm really lucky to work with people that actually believe in continuous improvement. And that's where the FinOps champions come into place. I actually have a FinOps champion in the room. Wave to the people. And so what's fun about this group is that each client business line has a representative, and they serve as our early adopters. They serve as our partners in the report and building and process building, and then also educating their folks in their groups. Now, let's talk about some of that early adopter conversation, right? One of the things that we found is that while I am not as technical as most of our other personas, I can usually draft up a report and then share it out. But we wanted to take it a step further and make sure that what we were rolling out was actually going to be useful to the end user, because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're building something that supports them in their day-to-day. So for us, what I will do is I will draft a report. Maybe I'll get a request. Maybe it's something that we're looking to have more information around in the future. I will draft it up, and then we'll have a FinOps Champions meeting. I will show them that report. I will get feedback. They are usually very honest with me, which I greatly appreciate. Or I will have them go through the UX process with someone in our communications department. That way, they don't feel like they're telling me how much they don't like the report. They're telling our communications person. And so you can get some of that raw information to better navigate. I then take that feedback back, make updates, and then document before rolling it out to the rest of the user base. And what has been really great about that is it allows us to have to do less edits. The more eyes you put on it, the more conversations you have about it. And then it also helps educate me a little bit more on what are they looking for. I will also say that most of our FinOps champions are actually the technical types. It's really kind of neat to have them care and be as close to the data as they are. But then I also get to learn a little bit more along the way. So, reporting badges. In a past life, I was a training and certification manager, and I never thought I'd have to build another certification again. Well, joke's on me, because I've had to create at least 3 more reporting badges to support gamification in our area. A coworker actually brought it up, and I was like, I'm not gonna do that. Like, let's not add complexity to the conversation. We got a lot going on. And then I put it in the roadmap. It started out on that 16-month roadmap and eventually made its way on the 12-month roadmap. Now, I'm actually very shocked at how much the reporting badges have picked up. But when you think about competition between the different banks, when you think about how folks want something to display on their development plan, it actually is a win-win. I've gotten a lot of reports that people are a little frustrated how hard it is, and I definitely put in some trick questions, but they have to actually navigate through the tool to get the answer to the questions and then be able to solve the problems and fill out the forms. And I will say, we've had some really good success with that. My hope in the near future is to actually provide persona-based badges, which will kind of weave through the different platforms we have to show a more comprehensive view. But for now, we just have 3 that support what we have right now. And so, I will say the last thing, and one of the things that's probably been really helpful, and I would recommend that if you are somewhere in the middle to early part of your journey, it would be something worth looking at, is a third-party maturity assessment. We were working with a vendor, and they came in and gave it to us as part of an implementation. And the timing was perfect because we felt like we were at a point where we felt pretty good. We felt solid, we felt steady. But out of that maturity assessment, we were able to get next steps, different KPIs to add and move forward with. And it allowed us to actually build our practice and take it in a new direction. And it actually might be time for another one soon, because it's been a little while, and here's our results. So I'm actually really proud of these numbers because it allows me to have a feedback loop to work on what do we need to do next. So right now we have over 450, and actually the last time I checked, it was 500 users in our reporting platform. Out of that 700 number, not too bad. Our cloud reporting has gotten a 9.7 net promoter score. Our FinOps community of practice has a net promoter score of 8.74. We've had over 50 people complete the badge certifications. We made it so that if you did all three, you got a fourth badge for your effort. And that really got people to take that last badge. So I will also say we got a 95 percentile on our FinOps maturity assessment. What's cool about that is, of course, we're not at the end. We have to see what else we can do to build it out. But excited to see that we are really doing what we need to do to make sure that not only are we saving money, but we're also monitoring the cloud, we're using it the best way we can, and disseminating that out to our end users. I'll also say we have 120 regular attendees to our quarterly FinOps community of practice, which is incredible because it's at a busy meeting time, and we have even more people actually watch the recordings. I will highly recommend, especially given how busy everybody's calendar is these days, if you have a training, record it. And then make sure that you post it in a place where people have permissions. Because it's interesting how the simple barrier of saying, I need to request access will keep people from that information. So making sure that you're providing that information, that even if folks let it drop off of their calendar, they're able to get it in an email. So please record your trainings or your demos, and make sure that people can easily get access to it, because maybe they can catch it on their own time. So to wrap up, what's next? We've done all this stuff. Shouldn't we be done now? Unfortunately, no. But we did learn last year, if there was anybody that was here last year, the keynote was about there are no runners. I literally have that sticker sitting at my desk in my office. And every time I think that we've hit the point, there's either a new idea, there's a new request, I hop on a FinOps call and learn something else, or I have a conversation that sparks something new. So there really is no end. We started building out all this stuff in 2021, and we've added several modules, the software has changed, the needs of our users have changed, and so it's time for us to kind of review and refresh. I will say one of the things that has been kind of hard to do, and when you're building all these new and exciting things, it's hard to take a step back and look at what you built out in 2021 or 2022. So making sure that our documentation was current, because there's always new people coming to the practice, whether you have new employees, whether you have a new application that might be onboarding. There's so many times that there's someone that comes and is like, I have no idea what any of this is. Where can I go? And you can take that link, toss it to them, and then they can go review the 20 hours of documentation that you've already recorded for them. I'll say that now that we're kind of in that cusp of business as usual in the cloud, metrics are becoming more and more important. And I will say that one of the things that I want to strive for is making sure that not only do we have metrics, but we're also tracking those value and impact stories. So often we're looking for, okay, it's just cheaper, right? We were told that cloud was cheaper. But can it be more secure? Can we meet demand better? There's so many other ways that cloud can help show us its dynamic that I think that we need to be sure that we're sharing that story back, whether that's with leadership, but also with our end users and our teammates. And just because you're migrating over time doesn't mean that you're not gonna see more. So making sure that we're closing the gap. I will say that now that we have gotten most people onboarded, they're ready to go, we've had to actually go back and have some of those 101 classes. And I thought, we're only gonna have the new people hop in. What we found is that people are like, oh yeah, I've been using it for so long, but I need a refresher on the basics. And so we have people coming, and then also, because they are excited about the badges, we then see a rush of the completion of the badges as well at the end of those one-on-one calls. So if you have been out there for a couple years, you're like, okay, everybody should know everything about this particular tool or this reporting. They might not, but they might not be willing to speak up and say anything to you about it. So keep that in mind. And last but not least, we'll always be refining our budgets and forecasts. Every budget cycle, we learn a little bit more. We get better, and we keep trying to work on it. So we're testing different methods. There were some things that I heard at last year's conference that I'm hoping to implement in the near future, including confidence intervals, being able to, time block some of our reporting. So having those conversations up front about what's on people's roadmaps, getting dates and times, so that then we can create a dashboard, stick a pin in it, and watch it over time, and then be able to replicate that time out over a couple months to be able to forecast for a particular application. And we're also tweaking how we collect that information, right? Having the conversation of, hey, if you update your forecast, you're not gonna lose your budget. Don't worry, let's have that conversation. I will say that that's been one of our biggest fights, is that sometimes people don't wanna update their forecast because they're worried they're gonna lose their dollars. And of course, in our space, you do not want to lose your dollars. But we're building on those improvements, and I look forward to seeing what the next couple of years have in store on there. But at the core, we keep building, we keep learning, we keep growing in this FinOps space, and I'm excited to have seen our practice grow as far as it is, and as far as making it to this stage. So you can leave feedback and connect with me there.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. For more FinOps X 2025 content, go check out our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and leave comments and questions for all of our wonderful speakers. We appreciate your support.